Hi, I'm Gloria, and I am from Northwest Ohio, and you are listening to the Two Trees Podcast.
Bum. I like that part.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Two Trees Podcast, which has the illustrious voice of Mr. John Dillon.
That is me.
The unwavering, unflappable wisdom of Rosemary Moeller.
Hi, everybody.
And
that's enough.
Me, Martin Listener, the official intro man of the Two Trees Podcast. It was brought to my attention by mainly myself, but maybe a few others as well, that I always say who I am, but I never say who you guys are.
I am me.
I want to know who brought that to your attention.
So it was brought to my attention very gingerly and kindly and lovingly. And so I thought, you know what?
It was
Why
your
not
wife, wasn't it?
Put myself last instead
That's
of first.
Very kind.
I feel like it might be biblical even as well. But, you know, I'm not trying to say that I am that kind of a guy. But
you are.
I am living it at this very moment, which is very far and few between. But anyway, welcome to the Two Trees Podcast. You are right in the middle of Season 3. Actually, we're like 7/12 of the way through Season 3, I'm assuming, as long as we go the whole year out with that. But also, we are right in the middle of the conference. In fact, we are maybe in the last month of the conference. Maybe we have a couple more coming. You never know with us, and neither do we until it happens. So Mike Chu is probably going live today, right when you're listening to this. He may be live a few minutes earlier than that. But he's going to go through with the book of Revelation.
Yeah,
and
he's
the Tree
going to
of
be
Life.
talking about the Tree of Life in the book of Revelation.
And if you know Mike Chu the way I do, which is twice on video conference, he is a very smart individual and knows what he's talking about. So it's definitely worth the hour-ish time for you to listen to it. And then it's most certainly worth the time of you getting together with some people you know, or just going to the coffee shop and grabbing some random person and say, let's talk about this very high-level theological stuff that Mike Chu is talking about. I prefer the first one, the people you know.
Oh, come on. How fun would the second one be?
Either way, you could
if you
blow
could get
somebody's
like
mind.
a rabid look in your eye, maybe drool a little bit.
And that's why John doesn't have very many friends at the coffee shop anymore. But
I have two friends, and they're on the podcast. Yeah.
long story short, you might find somebody that's just as weird as you are and loves to talk about Jesus because they love Jesus. So that's the perfect combination of that. That's about all that I have for our intro. Oh, if you like us and you really want to like us, go to our Facebook page, The Two Trees Podcast, right on your Facebook search engine, and you'll find us, a nice little emblem there that looks like two trees, or at least some kind of romanticized version of two trees. And you click on that and like us. You can follow us. It doesn't cost you a single dime to do that. Or if you want to go to thetwotreespodcast.org, you can see a whole bunch of information, including who we are, what we stand for, why we do this, and all of that good stuff, including the conference information as well, all on our website and Facebook page. But if you've been listening to us for a long time, you already knew that. If this is your first time, welcome. We love you so much for listening to us because that's what keeps us going on here. So without further ado, we're going to go right into what I assume is the book of Matthew, but it's something that I don't even know if I've ever heard of, John. So
Oh yeah, you have. You're just
tell
not
us a little more about
familiar
it.
of the word that's used. So I sent Martin a file, and it's called Peneus, and he said that he likes their bagels.
I was going to just say that.
But he
You
was
read
thinking,
my mind.
of Panera Bread. Peneus is something different. So what we're doing is we're pushing on through the story of Jesus. We're not deep diving into every line of this, but we're trying to trace the literary patterns, the big ideas, the big movements of Matthew as he's recording the life of Jesus. And so what we have just gone through, this miracle cycle that begins and ends with the feeding of thousands of people, is really to view this as not just Jesus making hungry people less hungry, because the next day they're going to be hungry again. The miracle has theological implications. This isn't just Jesus who cares about people, although that's incredibly true. He loves them, he feeds them, his heart is moved with compassion for them, but he wants them to know that he is the God of Abraham and David, the one who fed the people in the wilderness the first time. And so what Jesus has come to do is not to fix the social issues that mankind faces on a day-to-day basis, but to deal with the deeper, darker enemy of sin that has plagued mankind since the beginning. He's coming to wage war against Satan and the host of darkness. And at the beginning of the book, there's a lot thinner veil, if you want to think of it that way, between the supernatural world and the physical world. And then as the story goes, you don't get a whole lot of detail about what the darkness is up to. You only see Jesus as he moves through the world. And I really like that aspect because I have no idea really what the darkness is doing. I just do the best that I can with what I have. And the idea that Jesus models that for me and shows it to me in the Gospels is I think, encouraging. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't things that Jesus knows are going on, but you and I don't live in that world. We don't have an unrestricted view, thankfully, of the supernatural evil around us. Instead, what we see is human beings being human beings.
Do you think people get bored with that, though? I just feel like there's so much emphasis on, like, what is the evil doing and how are you being tempted and how can you overcome and all of that. And I feel like that's a sparkling way of looking at life. Like, it's an interesting way. It's a shiny object. And you're like, yeah, what is the evil doing around me? That way I can fight against it. And there's so many ways you can justify wanting to know more about the darkness or wanting to know more about the outside world and realm. But to your point, a lot of this is taking place, and they're really not talking about that kind of stuff. It's just day-to-day living.
That's true. And the reason for that, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, yes, anytime that we're going to get really specific about the demonic world, our clicks are going to go up,
right?
And when you start talking about the regular rhythms of the Gospels, which we have been doing, people aren't as likely to give you their time because it doesn't have that clickbait vibe to it.
Well, just an example, one of our earliest episodes is titled something along with Who is Satan? And it was our best episode in like the first couple of months. And it was just because I think we're talking about something that people want to know about. It breaks up the mundane. It makes it something that's exciting. Even if you know it's not a good thing or something you want to stay away from, it's still kind of like a car crash. You can't look away, right?
Yeah, and that's not bad. Like I'm intrigued by the supernatural world, and I try to drop those gems into the stories as we move along, but I don't usually highlight them as the central focus because of the model that Scripture gives me, and that is I want to show you Jesus mighty and awesome. I don't want to show you Satan creepy and awful.
So do you think there's as much of the spiritual world in the Gospel of Matthew as there is of the spiritual world in the Old Testament?
Oh, yes. It's abundant and it's everywhere.
So if you wanted to, you could clickbait, forever out of Matthew.
Oh, yes.
And keep highlighting and drawing out, but that's not the purpose because we're showing Jesus.
Yeah, it's
Question
a
mark?
purposeful choice that I've made in the writing of the outlines is I want to highlight so that Jesus is the center, and to view these things that isn't a way of just engaging in, guesswork or, those kind of things. And there's lots of quotes about them, and you can really dig into tradition and mythology and folklore and all of these things. But the ultimate reality is this is how the Holy Spirit chose to reveal Jesus to us. And he does it on both levels, but not to the extent that we wish that he would. All of us like learning a new secret, right? We love that light bulb moment where we see things. And so what I typically try to do when I sit down with my iPad to type is I typically say, okay, here's this story that they can read and understand all on their own. They don't need the Two Trees podcast to tell them Jesus loves the little children of the world. Like, this is a fact, that he fed the 5,000. The aspect that I hope that we're reaching is there's cultural and mythological and literary meaning and structure that might not jump off the page to the average reader. And so I try to give you more of that background. And honestly, I'm not trying to get you to go, oh, wow, this is new. Nothing that I'm telling you should be new. If I came up with something new, I would give a disclaimer at the beginning. Beware, John had extra coffee and had these thoughts.
But it may come across as new to you, though. I mean, like when we're talking, and And even talking with Carrie on the last conference, she was saying stuff to me that I was like, man, I've never even thought of it like that. Never even looked at it like that.
Oh, yeah.
And it was such a fantastic or brief moment for me of this new revelation in my mind where it's like, oh man, that like opens the doors for all of these different thoughts and different, rhythms of life that I can apply in my life. But then at the end of the day, when I'm laying down and I'm in my head and my thoughts, they're not really, that new revelation, that new tidbit, that new information isn't going to get me any closer in relationship with Jesus. If it's going to spark my interest to then get to know him better, that's fantastic. And that's what we want. But that's kind of your point in the way you're writing these outlines, the way that Matthew is portraying it is like, yeah, it's nice to know that. It's intriguing. It's a new shiny thing to think and meditate on. But realistically, when push comes to shove and the rubber meets the road, there's only one, person, there's only one entity that's going to help you get through your dark times.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to focus on.
And that's what I'm trying to focus on. I want to give you things that maybe you didn't know, but they're not new. Like people have been
Right.
thinking, like if you go back and you check like Carrie's reference about eating from the trees, you're going to find there's a long list of thinkers who've been talking about this, and it does help you see. So I'm going through right now, I've been diagnosed with diabetes, and so my vision is all blurry. It's giving me all kinds of grief because a big part of my job is reading. Even when I'm presenting, like I can't see my notes, so I've got it in like size 5,000 font kind of a thing. But I can see well enough to know which blur I'm talking to. And so like as things get clearer, it helps you engage in the moment because you're seeing this reality
Right.
in a better way, not as fuzzy. And I think a lot of our assumptions about the Bible are kind of fuzzy. One of them that we're going to talk about today has to do with this place called Peneus. And it has a setting that is filled with backstory that was obvious to the original authors and to the readers, but isn't going to make as much sense to us today, even though it has really shaped American folklore and symbolism, especially of the occult. We don't know why. And so we're going to get into a little bit of the why in this episode, and I'm going to talk about a little bit darker themes than I sometimes enjoy doing. But the passage after the feeding of the 5,000, right, it records...
So you're going to change the name of this to like
I was
a
gonna
deeper,
ask.
darker dive into the, more clicks and whatnot?
I was thinking something like Matthew 16.
No, no. I would.
Yes.
I maybe would click on that, or if it said Panera, I mean, I maybe would, but
I don't
Well,
know.
it's right after he uses bread to feed people, so
Yes.
it
That's
kind
true.
of rolls along
After
with it.
dinner.
yeah.
Continue, sorry.
Yeah, right. So Christ he's had confrontations, right, between Christ and the expectations of what people wanted him to do. So Jesus is feeding thousands of people, and he's healing Gentiles, and he's walking on water, and there's more and more and more healings. But still, the Pharisee community around the Sea of Galilee continues to come up to him and demand more signs. Do it again is the echo of what they want. And honestly, when you're reading this, Matthew gives you the assumption that no amount of miraculous feedings or walking on water or casting out demons was going to persuade these men to change their mind. I mean, if you've seen 50 exorcisms, 51 isn't going to sway the needle.
Right.
And so what you see here is that Jesus is now reacting to an ongoing rejection of his ministry. And he has shown it over and over again. In this section kind of walks you through some of those things. And he ends in Matthew 16, verse 4, and he says this, "An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given it except the sign of Jonah. And so he left them and departed." It feels kind of ominous, doesn't it? Almost like Jesus turning his back on the Pharisees. And in reality, Jesus doesn't turn his back on them. They are just as much in the scope of God's rescue mission as anyone else. But he recognizes this is not moving forward my cause. I have done here what I came to do, and now the next phase of my ministry is beginning.
So what does, maybe you're getting into this, but when he says the sign of Jonah, I've actually sort of wondered what that means, and I've spent zero time looking into it.
Well, the sign of Jonah.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, Jonah
Feels nice here.
is one of the most mishandled books of the Old Testament. And I blame VeggieTales for this because they don't include the ending of the book of Jonah. It's the only book in the Bible that ends with a question, right? You're supposed to have a reaction to the stubbornness and to, honestly, the evil heart that Jonah has. It's also, I think, the funniest book in the Old Testament. It reads at times like a Saturday Night Live skit. You have a prophet whose name is Dove, who is mean and violent. You have the bad guys are really the good guys, like the Assyrians turn out to be very loving people who want to be reunited with God. Even like the salty sea dogs, right, out on their boat, they turn out to be very loving people. The only guy in the whole book who comes across like a gigantic jerk is Jonah. And by saying this to the Pharisees, he's insulting them. What sign did it take to turn the heart of Jonah? Well, he was swallowed by the beast of the sea.
Did that really change his heart?
Oh, yeah.
Did for a day.
Yeah, briefly.
There's this really beautiful poem that is present in the book of Jonah, chapter 2. And you can tell, like, this is not Jonah's actual prayer. Like, it's very, unless, like, I mean, he did have time on his hands, so I bet he could have put something like that together. But it's this beautiful, repentant heart reaching out to God. And he says, even though I have no idea where I am and I'm below the deeps, my prayer will rise to the holy temple and God will hear the repentant heart. And then he comes out of the grave ready to serve and to change the world. And Jonah's mission is one to the Gentiles. This is something that the Pharisees, if there was a book in the Bible that wouldn't have appealed to their way of life, their way of operation. The book of Jonah is pretty high in that. And so people often wonder whether or not, Jonah dies or whether he survives. And the answer is we're not really sure what's going on with Jonah. Jesus, though, dies and 3 days later rises from the dead. This is the sign of Jonah. And so he's not saying, I'm done with you people. He's not at all. As a matter of fact, even after the death, burial, and resurrection, there are still miracles that the apostles are doing, and thousands of deeds and sermons. They aren't left alone. But there is this awkward moment where Jesus turns his back and says, "You've had me for a very long time. I will now go to the next place." And it's almost heartbreaking for me to think this way. Because of, and it hits me deeply because of my stubbornness. I want God to operate in a particular way. Rather than thinking, God, do these things, I oftentimes demand that God give me the sign that I'm asking for. And I recognize those moments are not the moments when I am truly lovingly, trustingly following Jesus. They're the moments when I'm flailing, I'm flustered, I need, my hands are out for something. And that's just the natural part of being human. And so Jesus isn't saying, I'm not going to help you anymore. But what he is saying is, you're so focused on the signs and you're ignoring all of the signs.
That's an interesting thought, though, because I think most people have that same mentality today where it's like, if I just had a sign of like obvious God interaction on earth, how that would change my life, like instantly, a drop of a hat, I'm changed, and then whatever. And you look back to the Old Testament, all the times where God revealed himself, and it's like, see, Abraham got a sign, see, Moses got all this interaction, see, Noah, whatever, whoever. And it's like, well, do you know what those people were doing before God revealed himself to them? That's another podcast for another time. But But also on top of that, it's like the Pharisees saw signs, and then another, and then another, and then another, and then another. And it was like going down the highway in the middle of the city. They saw signs galore, and yet they wanted one more, as if that one was going to be the one that changed the tide. And so when you look back at your life and you're like, man, how many times was there interaction with God in my life, whether it was what to do, what to say, what to wear, where to go, all these things, and him realistically being involved in your life, and you're like, yeah, but if I just had one sign, one sign, and So I think the Pharisees have a mentality of like the signs don't matter until they say I matter, and I see that in myself a lot. Maybe not the stubbornness.
Yeah.
Maybe that is.
Well, it is for me. Like there's an uncomfortableness to the Pharisees because of the reflective mirror they seem to hold up to my own heart, and I don't like that. I like a clearly defined bad guy that is someone else. Right? I don't like to see me in the problem people. I would like to see more of Jesus in me than me in the Pharisees. But the Pharisees aren't Jesus's enemy, right? They are the people for whom he has come to die and to rescue, to save them. There is a supernatural evil behind what is happening that has them ensnared. And so he tells his disciples to leave them alone. They are blind guides. And suddenly the pattern of Jesus' ministry changes. It had been focused on rural areas around the Sea of Galilee. Healings, preaching, miracles on repeat. And no doubt this pattern could have continued for a very, very long time without ending in crucifixion. Jesus, though, has not come to establish a megachurch, right, that exists for hundreds of years where he's preaching and preaching and preaching, and everyone is flocking to this new Jerusalem that's been built in Galilee. What Jesus does is he picks a fight with the darkness, and he lulls it into a false sense of power and destroys Babylon, destroys Satan and the host. It says that if they had known, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. This is beautifully illustrated in a way that even a child can wrap their mind around in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where Aslan's death is the very thing that no one expects, and it is the only hope that Edmund and the others who have been trapped by the White Witch have. This is C.S. Lewis's showing the gospel through story. And so Satan has this world in control. The Bible calls him the God of this world. And Jesus has come to dethrone the rebel, to break the hold of Satan. And so to do that, he's going to use this sign of Jonah. And that's kind of vague, kind of mysterious. Did Jonah die in the beast? He's delivered from the hold of death. This is all leading to the cross, right? He's about to issue a challenge, to knock on the very doors of the powers of hell and just kind of wave. Hello. I am here, be aware, I go where I want, I do what I want. He invades the darkness. He's done this before when he crossed the Sea of Galilee into Bashan, but he didn't linger. He was right on the edges of it, and he performs a miracle, he casts out some demons, and then he leaves and goes back to what he's doing. What's about to happen is that Jesus is going to take a several days journey through the swampy territory north of Galilee towards the capital city of Herod the Tetrarch, a man named Philip, to an ancient temple that is at the roots of Mount Hermon in Bashan.
Is this Philip? Was he the one that Herodias was originally married to?
No, this is the one. Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. And then she kicked him to the curb and married.
Yeah, she swapped him out for a different model.
Okay. Interesting.
I'm very interested when you say that Jesus' journey takes a different turn or a different direction, because I think about that all the time. And there's so many times where the smartest of the smart people had an understanding of what the ministry of Jesus should look like. And he seems to go the opposite direction so many times. And it just makes me wonder, like, why did he do that? I don't think he's doing that to contradict what they're saying. He's not saying, like, you tell me to go this way, so I'm going to go this way. But there is something guiding him and leading him, and I know he is the almighty and omnipotent, or however he had when he was in his physical form. But somehow he knows exactly where to go that's going to be the biggest impact necessary.
Right. If it was a human author writing this story, you would send Jesus straight to Jerusalem or to Caesarea Maritima, where the other Herod has his power base. But Jesus has been pretty much in the highways and byways, right? He's been out in the rural areas. It was John the Baptist who was shaking the palaces. Now Jesus has changed tack, but he goes to the wrong Herod. This isn't the one that we would think he would go to. He doesn't go to Rome. He doesn't go to Jerusalem. He doesn't go to Caesarea Maritima. He seems to be walking north away from the story. And this is because there is a reality beyond what is shown to us.
And when I was growing up, and I'm sure a lot of people have had this as well, I had a little bracelet on my hand that said WWJD on it, and that stands for What Would Jesus Do? And the reasoning behind that is so we can interact in this world the similar way that Jesus did, because we're trying to bring forth the kingdom of God. That's the message behind the bracelet. But when I read through what Jesus is doing, he's almost willy-nilly going wherever he darn well pleases, no matter what anybody says is right or wrong, and yet he's always right. And I think, how am I supposed to replicate what he's doing?
That's a good point.
How am I
Maybe-
supposed to know, like, if I go to all of the smartest people that have done it all in the past, they're going to tell me to go this way. Who am I to say, like, actually, I'm just going to pick a random direction the other way and start walking?
Well,
that's
go
that's
ahead.
why the book that bracelet's from is called In His Steps. Like, now that you're a reader, maybe you should read that.
Getting there.
Part of it, though, is I think when you read of that movement in particular, it's about, doing good deeds. How
Sure.
would Jesus respond to a mouthy cousin or somebody who's just told you, and it's about those responses. Jesus, though, is aware of the supernatural powers that are real. They are in the world. And remember, his story is not just dealing with the boots on the ground in his day, but he's also wrapping up the storylines of the Old Testament. And he's bringing fulfillment to the stories that have been in motion since the beginning.
And I think, just to finish my point, what I'm saying there, the bracelet was just a way of bringing up what would Jesus do. But the idea is, like, somehow Jesus knew where to go, what to do, what to say. And when I'm reading through some of these scriptures, I'm trying to think behind the curtain. Because when you say, what would Jesus do, you're thinking like, okay, in this point, he turned the water into wine. So maybe I need to go get some wine for somebody.
Yes.
Bad example. But what I'm saying is, when Jesus came across a point, he acted in a certain way. What we think we should do is replicate the action. But what Jesus is doing is he's deciding in that moment what he is really fighting against. Is he fighting against the stubbornness of the Pharisees? Is he fighting against the temper of somebody? Is he fighting against the wickedness here or this? And then he is concocting a plan that's going to combat that.
That's
so we
right.
don't need to sit here and say, well, he did this, so I need to do that.
That's
He
right.
went south, I need to go south. But we need to be able to decipher in the moment what truly is going on, not just the actions that the human beings are doing, but the realistic reality of what Jesus is fighting against.
So years
And
ago,
that changes the way I've read
Yeah.
for a while.
years ago, my wife and I made the decision in ministry that given the opportunity, we're to continue to move south. And ever since then, we have only moved north. Every
Joke's
move,
on you.
yeah, I think there was a giggle in heaven hearing our firm determination to end up somewhere cool like Savannah or something like that. But anyway, what the story goes back to Bashan. That's where he's going. This is a land of ghosts and spirits, stories, where Og the giant had once ruled, to a temple at the foot of the mountain, which stood as a giant symbol for the rebellion of the Watchers and the demonic world. If you're in the Sea of Galilee on a clear day, off to the north, you can see the peaks of Mount Hermon. And it is a place that is it's infused with stories. Deep at the roots of that mountain, springs of fresh water climb up out of the underworld to a cave that's called Peneus. Not Panera, but Peneus. And so it's holy to the priests of a god named Pan, who is half man, half goat in appearance. He's a rapist, he's a murdering spirit, and he's famous for the effect that he supposedly has on battlefields. And it still has his name in it today. It's the word panic. The story connected with him is that he is a Nephilim. He is half God, half man. He rules in the wild places, urged with animal instincts as well as human wisdom. And it's a very strange place for Rabbi Jesus to take his followers to. The ancient historian Josephus, who doesn't always give you unbiased views of the world around him, he's always kind of comes out shining in his stories. And you get the idea this guy is probably not as good as he appears to be. But he gives a very good description of what Peneus looked like in Jesus' lifetime. It says, When later on, through Caesar's bounty, he received additional territory, Herod there too dedicated to him a temple of white marble near the sources of the Jordan, at a place called Panaeon. At this spot, a mountain rears its summit to an immense height aloft, and at the base of the cliff is an opening to an undergrown or an overgrown cavern. Within this, plunging down to an immeasurable depth, is a yawning chasm, enclosing a volume of still water, the bottom of which no sounding line has been found long enough to reach. Outside and from beneath the cavern well, up the springs which, as some think, the Jordan takes its rise. And so if you can picture this, it's a hole in the mountain, like the gaping jaws of a cave, and it's filled with a black pool of water that they can't seem to hit the bottom of. They were throwing sacrifices into it that would sink down into the depths. There was worship of Pan all around them, and it was sexual in nature. It was violent in nature. It is the celebration of perversion. That's the temple of Pan. In the 1800s, there is a massive earthquake, right? The roof of the cave falls in, and it shifts the water column so that today the cave is dry and much smaller. And the pool of water rises up in front of the entrance. It erupts full-fledged, and it adds its waters to what will become the Jordan River. There's also a really nice restaurant just down the road from there that has running water all around the tables. It's a really beautiful place. But its story is dark, and the worship that's taking place here is dark. And the message of Jesus is the exact opposite of all that Panaeus stands for. So we're going to take a good long look at Jesus and what he says and what he does while he's there. But one of the things that the Two Trees, I hope, is good at is investigating the ancient background and the worldview in which the story takes place. What background did the disciples bring with them to this site? What would the Jewish people think when they heard that Jesus had gone to Panaeus? It's a place of overlapping storylines, Roman and Canaanite and Hebrew. To them, it wasn't just a religious building. It is a site that is haunted by the stories of sin and the fall of the Watchers. It's a place where, at least in the minds of the people, the throne of Satan and the darkness were welcome and right at home. So this had been a sacred site since early Canaanite times.
So what would be something that we could equate that to today?
I can't even wrap my head around something
you think like a
that
haunted
today.
house, or they just had that little doll that's supposed to be
Annabelle,
possessed and whatever, something like that. Or 10 times that, 1,000 times
1,000
that.
times. Imagine like you're walking into a place where it's as though the stories of the Old Testament never happened. The gods are on open display. There are sacrifices here. There are women who are temple prostitutes. There is abuse of every kind, and it is celebrated. This is a place where the Ten Commandments have no place at all.
So even like Auschwitz or something like concentration camp,
it would be
really
a
not even
blending
pushing that.
Of all of these different ideas. Slavery was incredibly common. It's hard for me as a Westerner to wrap my head around what this would have been like. And so I think that's important, though, in reading the story, because when the audience reads Caesarea Philippi, they knew that place. That's a word that had a background that they already knew. Like you said, Auschwitz, that instinctively pulls up all the racism and the hatred that's infused into that word. And a modern reader knows that without being told.
Right.
It's the fact that we have new stories, because we're so far from this event, that can cause the Bible reader to misunderstand how powerful a statement it was for Jesus to go and to set up shop right in the middle of the one place spiritually where he is most unwelcome.
And we talked about that a lot at the beginning when we were talking about territorial spirits and how it seems like God intentionally goes onto the battleground of the other team. Like he says, I'll come to your place and we'll play. And it seems like Jesus is replicating that here almost even more so, it sounds like.
And that's an important aspect of the ministry of Jesus. So many times you'll be reading his story and think, wow, does this sound like this event in the Old Testament? This, to me, sounds like when the Ark of the Covenant was taken to Ashdod and to the Philistine cities, and the hands of Dagon and his head fell off because God didn't need anyone to stand up for him. He goes into the belly of the beast and out again unscathed. Sign of Jonah-esque. He's acting it out. He's living this.
So when we were at the Isaac Museum a couple weeks ago, the little ivory figures that were those from Canaanite?
Oh, from Megiddo, yes.
Yeah. They wouldn't have been from this area.
They would have been south of this area.
Okay.
But those are beautiful. If you ever get a chance to see the ivories of Megiddo, they're very ancient, but they're gorgeous. The artwork involved on them is not stick figures at all. It's really stunning.
I was actually a little bit, well, I don't know if creeped out is the word, but kind of. There was a priestess, and the detail. I mean, you knew this was a priestess just looking at it, you know.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking about that when you were talking about this being a Canaanite place of worship. So maybe she wasn't from this particular place,
But that
the
same
idea,
culture would have been at this cave. Originally, the Canaanites have different names for the deity that's being worshipped there. The book of Enoch tells us that this is a place that goes all the way back in the story of the Watchers. And there is a word that's in the Bible that is connected to this site, to goats and to the worship of Pan and those kinds of things. And it's the word Azazel, right? To modern folklore, Azazel is where many people believe we got the image of the devil with goat hooves and a pitchfork and horns on his head. Even today, if you're the kind of person who watches scary films, why a goat? Why this Baphomet character?
Because their eyes are the
that
wrong
develops later. Well, yeah, but a lot of animals have
your
frisbee
eyes are the
eyes.
wrong way.
It throws me off.
And so,
But yes, you're right.
Baphomet is really is Pan in reverse, right? Not a whole lot has changed. It's a goat head with a human body. Pan is a goat bottom with a human torso. And so the imagery of the wilderness and the wandering goat at home in the wilderness, it's creepy even today. But this imagery was true then. It's the beginnings of where our folklore kind of derives this idea from. So Azazel in the book of Enoch is one of the leaders of the Watchers who descended onto Mount Hermon to take wives. And it seems as though they traded them in the idea of, I will give you secrets if you will give me your daughters. There's this abuse of women that is deep in this act. And Azazel is deeply connected to metalwork, swords, razors, and magic. Judd Burton calls him the god of the razor. He's a really great professor. But he's a god of sacrifice, of bloodletting. In the book of Enoch, chapter 9 and verse 6, this may be the first time I've ever directly quoted from the book of Enoch on the two trees, but this is what it says. See then what Azazel has done, and how he has taught all iniquity on the earth, and revealed eternal secrets that are made in heaven. So that prefix there, as, it means goat. Right, so this is going to come up in the teaching. This is a deity who is connected to goats in the eyes of people. And so a Jewish person like Peter or Bartholomew or somebody coming into the temple of Pan would have had this story rattling around in his brain. He's been raised on these stories. When he sees a goat god of Pan, he doesn't have the Greek stories as the forefront of his mind. He has his native Hebrew stories in the forefront of his mind. And so
I really like how you put it here where it says the book of Enoch is not scripture, but it tells how the ancient Jewish people thought about the rebellion of Genesis 6. And, I mean, you probably have never heard somebody give a sermon that hasn't looked up some kind of, complimentary speech about what they're speaking about.
Right.
Easy enough for me to say. But, you're looking at other things that aren't from the scripture that are helping you learn and develop what is actually being said in the scripture. And so the Jewish people at that time are doing the same thing by
That's
the
right.
book of Enoch. They're
They're
saying,
telling
like,
the
this is
story.
now what God says. even if it's not in the canon now, but it is giving the background information to how they are viewing what's happening in the world. So
Absolutely. There were creative writers and storytellers throughout all of human history. And the book of Enoch is about that. It's about, hey, let me tell you the story. In the book of Genesis, it touches this subject, but we remember. Let me tell you our stories. And the New Testament quotes it several times, especially in the book of Jude, it comes up. And so you can't just throw it away. It's part of the cultural river that is the New Testament. Okay? I hope that makes some sense. I'm not saying it's scripture. So the disciples, right, they're surrounded by people coming to worship a Nephilim-type character. Goat images are everywhere. Sacrifices are being lined up and walked to the altars, temple prostitutes working the streets. They would literally have felt like they were in the belly of the beast. And this line that Jesus has just given of the sign of Jonah should have been rattling around in their minds. Are we going to get out of here? Like, what's going to happen? Because Jesus is the kind of guy who would stand up in the middle of this courtyard and tell everyone that this is dumb, that these are false gods, and that he has come to break the bonds. And I don't see the priests of Pan, the god of the razor, handling this very well. So they're literally on edge. What's happening here?
It's kind of like just a thought that's coming to my mind. If Jesus went into a biker bar and started downplaying how bad motorcycles are, like not the time and place to be saying these kinds of things. These guys are big, rough, mean guys, and they're not.
He pushes all the bikes over outside.
Or like that scene in The Patriot where he goes into
God Save the King.
Right. It's like, I think we're in the right place.
Yes.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look a little bit about, beyond the book of Enoch, where does this goat imagery, how would the Old Testament have flavored the minds of the disciples and the people who heard this story in the first and second and third generations of Christianity? And so we're going to go to the book of Leviticus, chapter 16, verses 6 through 10.
Aaron shall offer the bull as a sin offering for himself, and shall make atonement for himself and for his house. Then he shall take the 2 goats and set them before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron shall cast lots over the 2 goats, 1 lot for the Lord, and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall present the goat on which the lot fell for the Lord, and use it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before the Lord, to make atonement over it, that it may be sent away into the wilderness to Azazel.
So God sometimes uses physical stories or physical events to teach deeper truths. The rainbow after the flood, breaking bread and wine at communion, baptism, raising up stones with 12 components to build these up. The Bible's filled with these. And he's going to, in the book of Leviticus, give us a physical way to think about evil. And he does it with goats. Goats, they were eating goats all the time. They were milking goats. They were using the goat hides. Goats were a very important animal for the agriculture of the community, and they still are.
And the greatest of all time.
They are, by their very nature, yeah. And so they're it's not an evil thing, per se. But in the book of Leviticus, it creates a picture. One of these goats is going to represent an offering and an approach to God. It's going to show us that we are welcome before the Lord. And the other goat, we're going to symbolically pile all of our sin and all of our guilt onto this goat, and we are going to send it back to where it belongs. Send the garbage to the dump. It doesn't stay in the camp. It is taken away back into the wilderness, back into the wild places, which are symbols of death and destruction.
And how many of those goats came back to the village?
Well, that became a big worry. People finding a goat wandering alone in the wilderness, you would have thought, oh, jackpot. This is money on the hoof. Became a picture of fear. What if this is one of those goats? What does having the sin symbolically put on you do to the goat? And people began to view a lone goat in the wilderness with unease, with a bit of question, especially in a Jewish community. And even today, that if you were out hiking in the woods at night and you happened upon a lone goat, All like you're not thinking to yourself, "Oh, he's so cute." There's creepiness to that, and so what they actually began to do, Martin, is they ran it off a cliff
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
to make sure it died. We don't want this guy wandering around out there. But it's a way of showing that God is unlike these fallen, twisted gods. Send the sin away to where it should be.
I have a question. I've read about sin eaters. Is this?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, is this where this would have came from? It feels very obviously that it is. So why? What is the purpose?
So in Christian mythology, especially in Wales and in Appalachia, where I'm from, the idea of a sin eater is a mixing of a lot of different ideas. It's the idea that I can take the pain from your body and sacrificially make it mine. The Green Mile famously depicts this. It's a southern kind of thing, but it has roots in Europe and in Africa and in different places. But yeah, it all goes back to these images of where does it go, this guilt? Obviously, it's not a physical thing, but that's what humans are used to talking about, of thinking and visually describing things. And God speaks to mankind in ways we can see. And so you could sit with your son or your daughter as they drove the goat away and explain to them, that goat is being driven away because he represents all of the evil in our lives. And we've put it, and we're sending him away because we want our place to be holy to the Lord. It's a beautiful way of describing a very deep and complex issue. So much so that even today people are endlessly arguing about atonement. But what we can all agree on is God doesn't like sin. This is bad. It doesn't belong here. The Bible talks about how he has set our sins as far away as the east is from the west. This imagery goes back to this idea that the King James calls this a scapegoat. Someone who didn't do something wrong, but is being blamed for all of the things that we have done wrong. So just a few verses before this passage in Matthew, Jesus is walking on water, right? That's a picture of his dominance over the forces of chaos and evil. And we did a whole series on water. Actually, Rose, it's when we met you. When we were in Jerusalem, we were in the middle of we left Martin behind because he had to go to work and things like that. But we've talked about this before, but the imagery is the same. God does not sink into the water. He walks on it. He goes where he wants. He does what he likes. Let's look at another verse. This is from also in Leviticus chapter 17, verses 6 and 7.
And the priest shall throw the blood on the altar of the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and burn the fat for the pleasing aroma to the Lord. So they shall no more sacrifice their sacrifices to goat demons, after whom they whore. This shall be a statute forever for them throughout their generations.
So in the story of the Exodus, there was an idea floating around that people were visualizing demons as goat-like creatures. And perhaps they presented themselves this way. I think they're spirits, so I don't think they physically look like anything, but they can appear, they can manifest, they can do all kinds of things. But when the Bible talks about them, it specifically uses this image of the goat demon. It's a picture of a being at home in the wilderness. He lives where nothing should be living.
So then, and again, maybe you're going to touch on this later. Was at Peneus, did they get their goat imagery from the idea of what the Lord did with the Azazel? Or was he using the goat and the Azazel because it was already a common thing that was going on?
So in the end, we're not entirely sure. We know that there were Greek peoples who set up an altar to Pan. And we know quite a bit about Pan's mythology. And he was very much at home there, and that religion spread from place to place. But Paneas is the city of Pan. But there also seems to be the attachment of previous demonic worship sets going on in this space that have goat-like attributes. Judd Burton put a great book about this. I don't think you can get it on Amazon, but I just got my copy back from Rose recently, so call me and I'll share it with you. And so you can read about this, but it is the idea that when the ancient people thought about the demonic world, they often would have attributed goat-like characteristics to it. And so walking into the city named after the half-human, half-god, twisted, rapist, violent, murdering, I mean, I don't have enough bad adjectives for this guy. It would not have been a pleasant experience for them. And Jesus standing in the middle of this is very much like him standing on the sea and shouting to the waves, "Be still," or walking on the water. He is demonstrating that the darkness and the world cannot touch him. Let's go to Isaiah 13, 19 through 22.
I will do that as soon as I find my place. Okay. In Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the splendor and pomp of the Chaldeans will be like Sodom and Gomorrah when God overthrew them. It will never be inhabited or lived in for all generations. No Arab will pitch his tent there. No shepherds will make their flocks lie down there. But wild animals will lie down there, and their houses will be full of howling creatures. There ostriches will dwell, and there wild goats will dance. Hyenas will cry in its towers, and jackals in the pleasant palaces. Its time is close at hand, and its days will not be prolonged.
So the Bible doesn't usually address spiritual evil in plain language, especially in poetry. Instead, it uses vivid word pictures of beasts prowling in the darkness. So imagine for a moment that you are part of a caravan that's moving through the desert. And every evening, you and the boys gather up together around the campfire. You'd pass around some good food, maybe some bowls of olives. You're enjoying yourself, but at night...
I thought you said good food.
Olives are great. Get out of here. But around you at night, there are creatures that you did not see all day making a stink. They are wild. They are moving. They are aggressively loud. And some of those beasts are dangerous. Lions moving through the darkness. Hyenas cackling. The idea of movement of big birds through the winds. You can't see it, but you know it's there. This becomes a way of discussing supernatural evil. I can't see it, but I feel its presence. I always think the ostrich one is kind of funny here. But imagine you're a people and you're wandering through at night and all of a sudden an ostrich comes charging out of the darkness at you. It would freak me out.
I think they're really mean.
I think so. They look mean. But this imagery is a way of describing the demonic world.
Wait a minute. How fast would you have to run to get away from one? Because remember the snake
Black
and
mamba.
the 7 miles an hour?
First of all, that was
I
on me.
figured Rose had that on the tip of her tongue ready to come
I
out.
actually was going to not bring this up, but I get my ostrich information from watching Jumanji, I think the second one.
Yes.
So, not big on science and math over here.
Let's look at another one. Let's go to Isaiah 34, verse 14.
And wild animals shall meet with hyenas. The wild goat shall cry to his fellow. Indeed, there the night bird settles and finds for herself a resting place.
Wild goats having meetups with hyenas. This makes them sound like there's mischief afoot. They're gathering together. This is not talking about animals. This is talking about supernatural beings. And actually behind the English word here is the word for goat demon. That word there, it says the wild goat. It's sahir, and it means the hairy one or the goat demon. That phrase just a little bit further down, the night bird, that's the literal reading of this. But if you read it in Hebrew, the word here is Lilith. The Mesopotamians had a demon in their folklore called Lilith. It dates back to the 3rd millennium BC. And we can see from the Sumerian epic like Gilgamesh, its presence. It is an evil, evil creature. And the Bible uses its name here as a way of discussing the unseen evil. But it's meeting up with the goats. This is a way of talking about the demonic world. And so Lilith was very popular in ancient Mesopotamia. She's had a very big revival in Appalachia. There are a lot of people who talk about Lilith in Appalachian folklore. These aren't words that are meaningless today. even though they might not have a meaning to your culture. They exist in the minds of people that you may know. And so from the word lil, we can see these demons are related to stormy winds. That's what that phrase comes to. So it's almost like a storm, a creature of the wind, of the night. The Dictionary of Deities and Demons has a whole article written about Lilith, which you can read on your own time. But this is the way the Old Testament talks about the demonic world.
It blows my mind when you talk about this and you read something like this, because you see all of this information about this character. And like I said at the beginning, like how intriguing it is to go down the path of like, okay, well, Lil, that's the wind, so she must have been a bird-like creature. And and so we're going through all of this and we can connect it to the Isaiah passage and all of this stuff. And it's like, what does that really mean? Why do we really care, like that she's a wind creature
so
or
what
not?
it tells me is, it tells me a couple things. First of all, it allows me to understand what the ancients are talking about. He isn't saying, if animals get in your yard, then Satan is there.
Agree.
There's not like a fear of goats that we should have. And so it enables me to understand the poetry of the Bible. And as a Westerner, I will tell you straight to your face, you probably are not as well versed in poetry as you ought to be.
Sure.
And a huge chunk of the Bible is poetry. And so this is not that moment, Martin, where I'm giving you the obvious application. In the end, it's pretty clear here. Don't be like Pan, do be like Jesus. And you can take this and run 50 ways.
Right.
What I'm trying to do is to give you that background, to paint the picture, and to give you the information of, okay, what is being discussed? Because the enemy thrives in ignorance, that sense of unknownness. And so if people come to you and they say, hey, did you know the Bible talks about Lilith? You'd say, absolutely not, and it does. You say, well, the Bible describes demons like goats. And you say, it does not. It does. This is a way of speech. And it's a way of understanding the culture of the Bible. And it also tells me if Jesus wants, and this is, I'm going to keep beating this drum. I've said it 3 times now. I'm going to say it again. Why does Jesus go here? It is because this place is almost custom built to look like the darkness, to remind everyone who's there of how different he is than anyone else. The Gospel of John uses the phrase, he is a light that shines out of the darkness. This is the imagery that we're seeing, that of spiritual warfare. And so, Martin, what I'm trying to show you is this isn't just Jesus like randomly saying, do you know what? My travel agent said that Caesarea Philippi is really nice. We should check that out. He's on a mission to show you his dominance over the darkness.
It just seems like this Isaiah passage gives so much information. Like it seems like a lot of times when you're reading the Bible, you're like, continue, more, give me more information, more detail. And this seems to be giving us quite a bit of detail, like so much about who this person or this entity is. And yet is it just like, okay, so now we know what they're talking about. Like it seems to me like Isaiah is giving you a lot here that you should be taking something from that or gleaning something other than just this is how they. I'm not trying to downplay what we're doing because I think that's exactly good.
No, but I'm trying to weigh whether or not I should tell you something that I think, and I'm just going to do it.
My favorite John moments.
You can tune this out if you like. There are times, I think, when the Bible does not only have a human audience in view, that it is talking to the supernatural world as well as to the humans. Psalm 82 is a classic example of this. Moments where God reveals things. And it isn't saying that God doesn't know about Satan and his hosts and what they're up to. It's just that they don't matter. What you are is a grand collection of losers. You have abandoned your post, and you will be condemned. These stories are glorified by the ancients, and Christ treats them with contempt. He walks right in, and he walks right out. He says what he wants to say, and he climbs Mount Hermon, and you have the transfiguration where God himself speaks and says, this is my beloved son. Listen. This is the painting of the picture. And I think it helps for me to meditate and to think about these truths. It doesn't give me an obvious thing to do. it gives me an obvious thing to hold and to let this percolate in my brain for a moment. There are other places in the Bible where this imagery of a winged, evil woman, Lilith-like character, and the idea of the scapegoat are merged into one thought. And it's in the book of Zechariah. So if you'll go with me to Zechariah 5, we'll read verses 5 through 11.
Then the angel who talked with me came forward and said to me, "Lift your eyes and see what this is that is going out." And I said, "What is it?" He said, "This is the basket that is going out." And he said, "This is their iniquity in all the land." And behold, the leaden cover was lifted, and there was a woman sitting in the basket. And he said, "This is wickedness." And he thrust her back into the basket and thrust down the leaden weight on its opening.
So here's the symbol, right? This is a vision. Zechariah's visions are awesome. It's one of my favorite Old Testament books. My church willingly allowed me to teach through this in a small group, and I loved it. They endured it, but I loved the visions in Zechariah. But here he's being shown something. There is a basket, like what you would find in a caravan, a big basket, and he opens it up, and inside of it is a representation of wickedness. Keep going.
Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, 2 women coming forward. The wind was in their wings. They had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the basket between heaven and earth. Then I said to the angel who talked with me, "Where are they taking the basket?" He said to me, "To the land of Shinar, to build a house for it. And when this is prepared, they will set the basket down there on its base."
So all of a sudden, he wants to know, okay, if we've got the wickedness in the basket, what do we do with it? Do we bury it somewhere? How do we get rid of wickedness? And stepping into the spotlight are 2 winged supernatural beings, Lilith-like. They're stork-like. They're long and ostrich-necked kind of a view here. These are not just, don't picture like the Hallmark version of a winged woman. Okay, that's not what this is. This is a demonic representation of something, and they are carrying the evil. Did you catch where they're carrying wickedness to?
To Shinar.
That's another name for Babylon. So this is the same imagery as you get with the scapegoat. We send the evil back to where it goes.
Quick question. It says they lifted up the basket between earth and heaven. Isn't that what the Tower of Babel was supposed to be doing anyway? Was
this bridge between the worlds, a thin place idea. Yes. So always it has been take the wickedness and send it away. And Martin, this is important because it goes into almost application mode. Jesus does not do that. He goes to where the wickedness is. He isn't saying, drive away the sinners. He is saying, I will go to you. That's the whole purpose of the incarnation, that he would come into the world and walk amongst sinners. And so, the Pharisaical movement, that idea of these are bad people, I just won't mix with sinners, and we'll create this little island of people who do things my way, that's the wrong application. Jesus does not do that. Instead of sending the sin away, he is going to bring it onto himself. And so there is a reversal taking place in the story of Jesus. Why would he go to this place? Obviously, it gives a beautiful contrast to show that I am not like these things. These are things you've been afraid of your whole life, and here I am, the good shepherd. Don't be afraid. Why? Because thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. But there's also this inspirational element of, I have come to seek and to save that which was lost.
And it's also the most overlooked verse in the whole Bible, John 3:17, when he talks about he didn't come into the world to condemn it, but to save it. And it's the same kind of idea. He's going into the world. We think about that, he came as a human being, but he's also going into the wickedness. He's going into the earthly, fleshly parts of it. And the power of Jesus allows him to go in there. The power of God through him allows him to go in there and remove the darkness.
That's right.
Or to shine a light on the darkness, and it will flee. And then, Paul talks about it when we struggle not against flesh and blood and all that. That's how Jesus is able to decipher that these humans, these creations that I have done, deserve saving. And I can do that through his power. And then me personally, can do that with my neighbor through the same power, the same resurrection power from the cross that Jesus had when he went to this dark, nasty place. I can do that with the guy who lives next door or the woman across the street or whomever. And it's like, that's a powerful statement. It's a very scary statement, but it's also a relieving statement that, like, you can also do that. That's cool.
Jesus shows this also I know you and I were talking about this earlier, but with the healing miracles, like where someone with leprosy touches you, you would be afraid I would get leprosy. With Jesus, it's the opposite.
Right.
Now you're going to catch my healthiness. There's this Eden-like rolling backwards the powers of sin.
Yeah.
That's all in view here. And so, what would Jesus do? Jesus would go to where he is needed.
Right.
Jesus wouldn't throw away people. He would strive to reach them.
And the wild part that I don't think we wrap our head around is that thing with the leprosy is just a physical representation of what Jesus does through you and into the soul of those that you touch.
That's right.
And the Edenic value that you have spread amongst your community, against your household, against yourself, is that you can spread that goodness into somebody else. And that's something that doesn't happen naturally. It's usually the other way around. And it's just a mind-blowing fact that you can do that in a way that you can't see, but you can feel and you can sense it, I think, at some points. And it has eternal value to it, not just the fact that your skin is clear anymore, but that you have an eternal body waiting for you. That's something that is hard to think about.
Yeah, it's a representation. I like that. Eternal value. It's a showing of the kingdom of heaven. Remember, his parables are all that. The kingdom of heaven is like, and then a thing. This is almost a lived-out parable. Let's now jump back into Matthew and start in verse 13.
Now, when Jesus came to the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, Who do people say that the Son of Man is? And they said, Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He said to them, But who do you say that I am? Simon Peter replied, You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered him, Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood have not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Then he strictly charged the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ.
So Jesus takes his disciples to the very gates of Pan's temple, which was believed to be like a gateway to the underworld, the gates of hell. And Jesus says to him, Who do people say that I am? And you have this beautiful, clear as a bell description of who Jesus is. Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And then Jesus says something really fascinating. Peter, you didn't figure this out on your own, but a spiritual being revealed it to you. The spiritual being. Not Pan, but the Father. People went to Paneas seeking a religious experience of the darker variety. Instead, God is capable of doing whatever he wants, wherever he wants. And in the very gateway of hell, you have this beautifully crystal clear declaration of who I, Jesus, would say am. Now, this is interesting because he then says, don't tell anybody. Well, it's in the Bible, and Peter spent the rest of his life telling everybody who it is. But in this immediate context, Jesus does not seem to be interested in Peter telling the human beings around him who he is. It's almost as though he is speaking to another audience. They heard what you said, Peter. You have proclaimed me to be God, and this the enemy will not tolerate. If the people, the humans, are starting to understand what Jesus is saying, if he dares come all the way here to our very gates, we have to act. And every story from this point on is Jesus marching to Calvary. You don't get these broad, sweeping digressions in his story. This is the beginning, the changing point of the book of Matthew. It leads up to here, and this is going to culminate in the crucifixion. But this is a war cry. This is that praising of the true king in front of the gates of the enemy. Now, an interesting thing happens here. I don't have time to get into the use of gates here, but there is a real prison-like element to the word that Jesus uses to talk about gates. But I want you to read what's going to happen in the very next set of verses. Look at verse 20 through 23 of Matthew 16.
From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, Far be it from you, Lord, this shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man.
In the very next text, right after Peter has had the exact right words to say, Peter says exactly the wrong words. He messes up. He's a human being, same as you, same as me. He fails here. But Jesus identifies him as a foe, an adversary. You cannot stop me, Peter, from going to the cross and dying. It's why I am here. Now, everything after this, he begins to show the disciples he must go to Jerusalem and be killed and rise again on the third day. Peter's attempt to stop this, it's almost as though you can see the supernatural evil saying, Peter, stop this. Don't let him go. There is an evil that is trying to block the will and word of Jesus.
And how easy is it to do? Hey, I'm going to go to this place so they'll kill me. By the way, I'm your best friend and your Lord. Wouldn't you want to stop that?
Obviously.
That's an easiest thing. That's the easiest way to be tempted from, hey, your best friend's about to go die. Don't you want to do something about it? Actually, yes, I do. Let's stop this, right? Like, that's such an easy temptation.
And he says, you are setting your mind on, not on the things of God, but on the things of man. I am here not just to go hide the sin in Babel. I'm here to take it onto myself. You used the reference of a sin eater earlier. That's born out of this image that Christ brings us, not of someone who just takes it away, but destroys it, makes it nothing. This is, I think, one of the more interesting cameo appearances of a city as a character in the Gospels. Rose, you had a thought earlier.
I have obviously it's a question, not a thought. So the word Christ means anointed one. So why does he specifically ask them not to tell anybody he's the Christ? What would if he was speaking to the spiritual world in an aside, what would anointed one have meant to the spiritual world?
The same thing it would mean to us. This is God in the flesh, the promised one. This is the serpent crusher.
So when he says, especially when John says, "Behold the Lamb of God who bears away the sins of the world," or takes away, would that have been in the anointing that's been put on him?
Yes, there are lots and lots of little moments, and some of them aren't so little, like when God talks out of the sky at Jesus' baptism. But Jesus isn't about tooting his own horn all the time. He makes it. Remember, his parables in part hide things. If you want me, come and listen. He isn't launching a Billy Graham-style tent crusade in Caesarea Philippi. We're here for a purpose, and it's going to get more pointed. But this identification of the deity and the Messiah role of Jesus, remember, this is what Matthew said he was going to do in the beginning of the gospel. I want to show you Jesus the Christ, the son of Abraham, the son of David. It's all coming together. And I love it when a good plan comes together.
Nothing like it.
Well, my friends, I hope that this just starts your study of this, that you dig into this. Who is Peter? What is this rock? The church is designed to be offensive, not defensive. There are so many beautiful applications you can pull from this text. But what I hope you take away is the knowledge that Jesus is the God of gods, the Lord of lords, mighty and awesome.